Well, good morning, everyone. It's Tristan Harris here from MarkMonitor. And by way of introduction, I am one of the brand protection specialists at MarkMonitor, which means I have responsibility for managing existing clients. I can't name those clients, but what I would say is if you were to take a stroll down Regent Street and look at the shops on that street here in London, you would see many of my existing clients. I tend to focus mostly on retail and consumer goods, but I'm also responsible for structuring programs for new and prospective clients, and certainly new and prospective clients in automotive markets and pharmaceutical markets as well. But retail and consumer goods is my main focus. Today we're going to talk about how social media can impact a brand's image on the internet and actually can be detrimental to your brand image, and how you can in turn mitigate your position. So when I poll my clients, or indeed when our marketing teams poll our entire client base and ask them what's most important to them as far as social media is concerned, almost always clients will express that they understand that their customer expects the experience that they have on their social media page to match their website and other channels on and offline. So there must be that same authentic, and I've described it as seamless, experience both offline and online. Information that's available on the website should also be available on social media, sale information, vouchers, promotions, and offers and so on. There should be simultaneous information across all channels. Additionally, social media is well recognized as a channel encouraging, promoting free speech. And unfortunately, with free speech can come negative or pejorative commentary as well. So brands often ask, how do we manage that without looking like the big company picking on the little person? The other challenge social media brings, and probably one of the most prolific challenges, is that it's opened up a new channel to counterfeiters. They are able to very quickly proliferate links, for example, to websites selling counterfeit goods. And it's become something as a safe haven. Over the last 10 or 12 years, brands and MarkMonitor have monitored mostly marketplaces like eBay and Amazon and Taobao and Alibaba in the East, and mostly websites, mostly e-commerce sites, because social media over the last 10 years has grown and has become more prominent. We really only focused on marketplace and websites. And so a great many counterfeiters saw social media as a safe haven, and still do to an extent, particularly with the smaller social media sites. So they feel they can set up a fan page, post a link to a website that says, hey everybody, look at this website I found in China that's X brand's outlet in China and that sells products at far discounted rates. And that website can actually be clicked on and trusted by those who are fans of a page that masquerades as your official social media site. And of course, given the speed with which information can be proliferated on social media, it can find itself on fora, websites, other social media pages very, very quickly indeed. So these are the challenges my clients have expressed to me specifically, and there's some of the things I'm going to expound on during the course of this webinar. So we understand social media is more relevant today than it's ever been, and it's growing at an exponential rate. And we'll see a little bit later on in this presentation that it's not just YouTube and Google Plus and Facebook and Twitter that are the growth platforms. There are so many smaller platforms coming through and gaining popularity that we need to be cognizant of the growth within the industry. We also see, and have seen in the last several years, certainly more prominently in the last 2 years, that social media has been used as a sales platform. Consumers are able to transact and purchase goods through social media sites, and then of course conduits like Shopify. And most notably and most uniquely, consumers are now able to become ambassadors for your brand without you actually electing them to that position. A consumer can set up a fan page and talk about your new season's collection, or talk about new products that you're launching, or things that are coming to market in 2017 and beyond, and proliferate discounts and offers and sale items, and express information about promotions that you may hold, and really do a lot of your marketing and a lot of your selling for you. Conversely, those same ambassadors can actually can also have a negative impact on your brand. Those same individuals can proliferate information about bad experiences, or poor service levels, or poor product reviews. And so this is why social media is so relevant to so many brands, and has actually almost taken the place of most brands' websites, where fresh and new and exciting content is created and proliferated. And many brands want to actually bring consumers to their social media pages before they actually want to bring them to their website. So this is an interesting slide in that it shows you, I think most people would recognize that Facebook is the largest of the social media platforms in terms of active users. But there are so many other sites that you must be cognizant of as well. LinkedIn, Twitter, and then a lot of the smaller sites like Flickr and Tumblr, WordPress, Reddit, of course, which is seen as the internet's largest forum. What becomes more interesting as we look at this slide is actually not just the active number of users, but the growth in members. So while we saw that Facebook, with 1.23 billion active users, was the largest social media platform if measured by that statistic alone, you can see that Facebook actually experiences the smallest growth in members, and it's the newer sites like Tumblr, Pinterest, and Instagram that are the sites that are tomorrow's Facebook in essence. So the challenges on social media, again, when I ask my clients what is most important to you about social media and what do you find most concerning and challenging, these are often the statements I hear from them, that they wish they could control freedom of speech because it's not always beneficial, and sometimes it's actually detrimental to their messaging or to their business. Impersonation becomes a problem. There was a lady at a very well-known high street brand I met in one of my own breakfast seminars who told me that at her company, their Facebook page had fewer likes than an impersonator's page, which had a greater number of likes by several thousand. No fan should ever have more likes on their Facebook page than you have on yours, because it gives their site greater credibility. So while fan pages may seem neutral or benign from some clients' perspectives, understand that impersonation can actually become detrimental later on, particularly if a counterfeiter starts posting links to that particular page, and given its vast number of supporters, it's going to have it's going to have that added credibility, and it's going to look like your site and you promoting that link. Social media pages, of course, transact business, which, if again they're transacting business through non-legitimate distribution channels, i.e. those distribution channels that aren't your own, then that revenue isn't touching your bottom line, it's going to a counterfeiter's business, and therefore a social media page that transacts business can become quite worrisome for you. The proliferation of websites we've discussed on a couple of slides here, but it's really quite frightening how quickly the link to a website selling counterfeit products can find itself shooting across all kinds of social media pages and being discussed in all kinds of fora, that whenever you come across a link to a site selling counterfeit products, it needs to be removed as quickly as possible from your or from some other social media page with as much haste as possible. And then, of course, with so many social media sites launching every year, it's very important that you maintain a good view of your exposure? How is your brand being represented on those sites, and does it represent the right brand image for you? So on the subject of freedom of speech, which I think is the most commonly discussed topic amongst my clients, it's easy to say, well, what's so bad about it? If consumers are acting as our brand advocates and as our ambassadors, why is that such a concern? Well, the problem is, for some brands, disparaging remarks can have a knock-on effect. If those remain on a Facebook page, for example, for other new consumers, people new to your brand see, then of course it can give them an immediate negative image about your brand before they've even had an experience with your brand. So our advice is always manage those through proper channels. That is to say, have somebody at your organization manage your Facebook page in such a way that they can address concerns on the social media page by perhaps responding to that particular individual and saying, if you have a concern with the product you bought, please email customer services, or please email me directly, and I'll be sure to make you whole again, make this fix the problem for you. And so that's a great way of managing negative commentary, pejorative commentary on your own social media page. And really only defend your brand carefully and selectively. Take discreet action. Don't try and remove comments. Don't try and remove material that somebody is posting on your social media page just because you don't like the look of it. You don't ever want to be that big brand that looks like they're picking on the individual consumer. So take discreet action, and I will talk at the very end of this presentation about what specific action you can take on social media pages yourself. Some clients, as I've mentioned, feel impersonation is benign or take a very neutral view towards it. As far as they're concerned, as long as there's no nefarious content, as long as there's no illegal content, any illicit content, what's so bad about somebody posting a page that innocently looks like a fan page? We would see that as impersonation. The problem with impersonation is, because social media allows anyone to contribute to a particular page, it can have the impact of a counterfeiter uploading information to that impersonation page and it looking to an unsuspecting or innocent consumer as your official page, and therefore that unsuspecting and innocent consumer takes the information from it and sees it as your official commentary, sees it as your official links to official websites, when in fact they're not. They belong to that of a counterfeiter. On Twitter specifically, the proliferation of negative commentary spreads far quicker than it does on any other social media site, because the whole premise of Twitter is to tweet something or to put up your message, and then also in turn those to take that message and repurpose it and put that content elsewhere. So negative messaging of any description, it doesn't necessarily need to be negative commentary, but negative information or just incorrect information can be proliferated quite quickly. And that can have reputational damage to your brand, particularly if somebody purporting to upload the link to an outlet store or a voucher, a discount code that can be used on your website, which is patently incorrect. You wouldn't want that kind of message to be proliferated, and then a whole load of negative commentary about how that voucher code doesn't work, for example, or how the outlet store actually sent a less superior product than the consumer would expect from your own store. So impersonation can have so many implications. I've just covered a couple of the instances where it's most impactful. And here are some examples, actually, of impersonation. And I've just picked on, this is not one of my clients, it's not one of our clients. I just picked on a particular brand that's familiar to most. And you could look at this and say, well, you know, who's counterfeiting Robinson's orange juice? Well, the chances are nobody is. But they may, in time, when this particular website has a sufficient number of likes and looks sufficiently legitimate, an individual may well put some content on here which is allied to the messaging of the Britvic company, who are the company that own the Robinsons and Fruit Shoot brands. So impersonation may start off quite innocent, but it may well have an impact in future. So our advice, bottom line, is be aware of your exposure on social media pages. Understand who has set up fan pages and who has set up pages that impersonate your brand, and monitor them. Keep an eye on them so that as soon as they have content or express a message which is allied to your own messaging, you're able to take the necessary action to stymie that commentary. I mentioned at the very beginning that counterfeiters have started seeing social media as a safe haven, and certainly did beginning about 2 years ago or so, I would say, in my experience, in that many brands focused on marketplaces, as I mentioned before, that had listings of counterfeit versions of their product, and they wanted those removed. And because those marketplaces attracted so much traffic, the counterfeiters were quite prolific in relisting items or listing items for sale there. And even if some of their listings came down, they were happy that some sales were transacted between them listing an item and an item being removed. When it got to a point where a client engaged with MarkMonitor, and MarkMonitor were taking down hundreds, if not thousands, of listings for that client every month on marketplaces, and shutting down websites and removing content from websites that were also infringing on a client's intellectual property or were suspected of selling counterfeit product, counterfeiters moved to social media. What they tried to do is set up fan pages, impersonation pages, and say, here's a link to a website where you can, or an outlet for X brand where you can buy products for up to 40% off, for example. And for the most part, most brands weren't monitoring social media. The focus was on marketplaces and websites. Well, more recently, brands have become cognizant of the issues on social media where counterfeiters are concerned, and now counterfeiters realize that they have to change their behavior again, because a great many brands are removing those links to websites, are removing impersonation pages, are removing their intellectual property from social media pages so it doesn't in any way look like an official page. In so doing, not only do you attract more consumers and potential consumers to your brand, you give your fan page, you give your own social media page more credibility, and you remove any credibility that the impersonator's page has. You want to draw more traffic to the site that has the most content and the most relevant material, and that would be yours. Throughout this presentation, I've talked about how counterfeiters will set up fan pages. And it's easy to think, well, a fan page is going to look very different from the professional page set up by the marketing department or the e-commerce department of a large brand. Well, that's actually not necessarily correct. Many counterfeiters will put a great deal of time and effort and resource into their own websites and their own social media pages. It would be, I don't think many consumers would look at this page, for example, and think it belonged to a counterfeiter. It looks official. It has Clark's logo, and I've just picked on Clark's. It looks official. It uses copyrighted images. It's well laid out. It looks very professional. It's an Instagram page, of course. And yet you can see it actually points to a different website. I won't try and pronounce it, but it's not a Clark's website. And now that website would look very professional too, and it would probably take copyrighted images and text, and probably most of the code from Clark's website, so it looked official, it looked like it could be a partner's website, it looked like it could be an affiliate's website, and therefore, to an unsuspecting consumer, it looks like the kind of site they may want to transact their business on. Another difficulty a great many brands have is with fake special offers. And counterfeiters will invariably proliferate messaging around a special offer, 40% off X brand of ladies' shoes, for example, if you go to this particular website. Well, an unsuspecting consumer may think that's a communication from X brand and applies to X brand's website too, and then may be a little disappointed when that special offer is not honoured by the brand's website, because of course it is not an official offer, and therefore may proliferate negative messaging on social media about how the brand isn't sticking by their original offer. Well, the brand never made the original offer. So it's very, very important that when you're monitoring social media pages that are fan pages or impersonate your brand but may not necessarily look threatening, that you keep an eye out for these sorts of things so you can identify them and address them and remove them where possible, so they don't have a negative impact on your own brand. It's also important to look at the content and images of social media pages, and even on the most innocent of websites that are brand ambassadors, innocent brand ambassadors who are merely huge fans of your brand and merely promoting your brand, you may still want to address any images and any content that isn't allied with your own corporate messaging or with your own corporate image. Here's an example of a social media site, so YouTube, where there's a form. It's a little bit more aggressive than some of the other examples we've seen. There's actually a form that aims to collect information here, name and address and email, which doesn't look particularly onerous or particularly dangerous for somebody to enter this information, but invariably thereafter, if somebody entered their name and email address into this form, they would very likely receive another communication addressing them by name from whoever's chosen to masquerade as Asda here, contacting them, perhaps asking for their credit card information, perhaps asking for some other information in exchange for Asda vouchers. And so there can be, social media can represent a nefarious threat to your consumers too. And of course, as I bulleted on the last slide, consumers will never blame, unfortunately, will very rarely blame the fact that they made a poor judgment call by going to a YouTube video which had a link to a page that offered a free Asda voucher in exchange for personal information. They'll always blame Asda. They won't blame their poor judgment. They'll say, well, Asda should be responsible, should be protecting me here. Asda owe me a duty of care where I shouldn't be allowed to find, I shouldn't find these links on social media. I shouldn't be exposed to this material on social media. Asda should be policing this. Moving toward partners now, many of our clients also struggle with how partners portray themselves on social media pages. In that, partners may use old images, or partners may use images and content that they're not necessarily authorized to do so, but the brand is very tentative in their approach with their partners because their partners are doing business on their behalf, so they don't want to upset them. So often ask what's the best way to manage this. And from personal experience with my clients, the most amicable and the most neutral way of establishing a policy for your partner is to suggest that every partner follow the same template. So provide your partners, affiliates, those within your legitimate distribution channel with templates for social media pages. update them with content, provide them with the copyright images directly. That way they're not taking images and distorting them with incorrect resolution or incorrect size, for example. And in so doing, you establish a single policy for all partners, and you avoid any uncomfortable conversations further down the line by asking partners to remove information which is opposed to your own corporate messaging. You should also monitor their sites, and when I look at some of our clients, my clients' programs where we monitor social media, we're not just monitoring social media for counterfeiters, we're also monitoring social media for IP abuse, but we're also monitoring partner sites, so the very partners of my client, to ensure that they are in compliance. Now, we won't take enforcement action against them. What we'll do is bring it to the attention of the brand and say, just to let you know, X partner in London is using what appears to be your images from 2015 or 2014. You might just want to give them a friendly nudge with 2016 imagery. It's also important, to a lesser extent, but also important for employees to maintain compliance on social media sites. This chap works for, you can see it, even though it was redacted, it still comes through fairly clearly. It's America's largest bank. He's a mortgage officer. We probably don't want an employee putting up a page on Facebook that has personal images, put photographs and so on, and using the corporation's name in his Facebook page. So you want to try and address that with employees too. We don't come across it that often, but in the same manner as I described when we monitor a client's affiliate social media pages, we would also monitor social media pages created by employees. Let's talk about e-commerce, because it's a fundamentally important area as businesses transacted now on social media pages. And we'll take a closer look in the next slide at which are the most prolific social media sites for transacting business. Why this is important is because it opens up another channel, as I mentioned at the beginning, for counterfeiters to sell product. Now, our data comes from Smart Insights. It's actually 2015 data. Smart Insights are not affiliated with MarkMonitor. It's research data that actually is some of the best on the internet in my experience. They also have 2016 data up there as well, but not the full year's data, of course. So relying on 2015 data, a good number of consumers rely on social media to guide their purchases. That is, they'll look at reviews. They'll hear the commentary of other individuals that have had an experience with your brand, and that will guide whether they do business with your brand, and very likely do business with your brand online. Many consumers, and we're all consumers on this telephone call, we've all discussed something, shared information, written a review about something we've purchased online. Therefore, it is a very important channel for you as a brand owner to manage, because you understand the power of a user, a consumer sharing information, good or bad, online. Facebook currently dominates the e-commerce marketplace. We'll see in the next slide by numbers in what capacity. What you want to ensure is the traffic that's going to your brand social media page is actually going to your social media page, and not to the social media pages of everyone who is impersonating your brand, good or bad. And most importantly, are your partners benefiting from social media traffic? Because, of course, what your activity to generate affiliate traffic should go to affiliate websites and affiliate social media sites. So looking at the numbers, Polyvore may not be as well known to most on the phone. They describe themselves as a social consumer platform where brands are able to upload images and content directly, and product sales are transacted on Polyvore site, as they are on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and others, as you can see in this list. So this information, also provided by Smart Insights, based on their social media research in 2015, shows that there is actually a much higher average order value than you may expect transacted on social media. It's not small money. It's actually a fairly decent sum of money is transacted on these sites. And when we look at where most of those come from, we've already established most of them come from Facebook. Most of them fall into photography, sports and recreation, pet supplies, and so on, clothing, apparel and jewelry and watches. So a great deal of business is transacted on Facebook. So you may actually, as part of your social media strategy, focus on Facebook more so than any other site right now, particularly if you're managing this yourself. And you may want to be cognizant of these categories as the categories where most orders are transacted. New social media sites, that said, are popping up what feels like monthly, many of which you may not have heard of, but these will become commonplace and ubiquitous over the forthcoming years. Just as Facebook started off as one of these smaller names, Whisper and WeChat and Bubbly will become as prolific as Facebook one day. So now let's talk about what you can do specifically for your brand. I always try and ensure in these webinars I don't sell MarkMonitor. I don't want to say MarkMonitor can do this for you, MarkMonitor can do that for you. I'd far rather empower you with some information that enables you to take specific action against infringers of your brand. So we'll talk about what you can do for your brand, and then we'll talk about what you can do in partnership with the social media sites to affect any removals of infringements of your brand or any counterfeit website links. So most importantly, create a policy for social media while social media is, and it is, still in its infancy, and certainly where e-commerce is concerned. So establish templates and policies for your partners and maintain a uniform policy across those partners. Establish a strategy for how you'll police social media yourself. So if you're a team of one, which many of my clients are, then maybe just look at the most prolific Facebook page, prolific infringers on Facebook, and maybe just say to yourself, I'll address Facebook this year, and I'll just keep an eye on Facebook pages, and whenever I see IP abuse or whenever I see links to counterfeit websites, I'll submit them to Facebook for removal. Some action is better than none, of course. And always understand what your exposure is. Always know approximately how many pages you have representing your brand on social media, whether they're yours or whether they're those of an ambassador. And, of course, understand what's happening in your name, regardless of how innocent or benign that particular site may appear prima facie. So agreeing on a look and feel for your social media presence is, of course, very important, because then it also shows unity across your partner network. It also shows a consumer what they should expect to see when they arrive on your social media page or a partner's social media page, and therefore anything that doesn't follow that uniform format could be a red flag from a consumer's perspective. You're in essence educating your consumer as to what they should be looking for, just in the same way logos are immediately apparent to us and recognizable to us. Well, the format of your website, the format of a social media page should be apparent to us, to your consumers too. Monitor feedback from your partners. Ensure that you respond quickly and in a timely fashion to any feedback or questions you have on your products, particularly from partners, particularly from partner social media pages, because it's just merely an extension of your brand and therefore a reflection of your brand. And ensure where possible that any traffic to your homepage or to the homepages of affiliates is directed directly to them from your social media sites too. Finally, this is where you can expect to have an impact on your own enforcement. So Facebook, for example, if we take the top line, Facebook will enforce on any social media page on your instruction that either has infringed your copyright or impersonates you. Other is always a very interesting topic. Other simply means if there's some other type of infraction on your brand, you can discuss it with Facebook, and it's kind of an open policy, and they'll deal with it on a case-by-case basis. But what you can be sure of is Facebook, Twitter, Google+, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Pinterest in part will remove content that infringes your copyright, represents any infraction on your brand, and any other case they're willing to talk about. Probably not freedom of speech. If somebody's written something negative, a consumer's written something negative about your brand, it's very unlikely that that would fall into the other category, but it's always worth a try. Whenever we're monitoring and enforcing on social media for our clients, anything that our clients see as impactful to their brand, we will always try and negotiate with the social media site that it should be removed, and it's in the interest of the brand and their site that it should. So you can take this action yourself. You can actually submit this stuff. Now, of course, MarkMonitor do it in a bulk, automated, mechanized fashion, and we can submit hundreds and hundreds in one go. Unfortunately, you don't have the technology or probably the time to do that, but certainly you can look at Facebook, to my earlier point, and say, who are the greatest infringers of my brand, identify them, identify what infractions their content represents, and submit that content to Facebook for removal, or Twitter or YouTube or Google+, as the case may be. So this is action you can take yourself. If you have any specific questions about social media enforcement, I believe my email address should have been on the invitation, or you can contact us and you can contact me directly and ask me any questions. And I'm always willing to help guide a client as to what action they can take themselves if they are not yet ready to engage in a structured program with MarkMonitor. So with 20 minutes to go, I always like to finish early. With 20 minutes to go, I'm happy to answer any questions. If you look in your WebEx window, you'll see that you can, very much like instant messaging platforms, you can type in a question and it will just pop up to me, and I'll read out the question and then I'll give my answer. And of course, the individual who submits the question will remain anonymous. So don't worry about asking a question which might sound silly or might sound obvious, because frankly, there are no silly or obvious questions. We were all new to social media and social media enforcement at one point. So I do have one question which I will read aloud and then I'll give the answer. Actually, this is from one of my own clients. Do you agree with the statement that social media is becoming increasingly mercantile? Social media, I hope I addressed some of this in part. Social media is becoming a more recognized platform for e-commerce. And as a recognized and trusted platform for e-commerce, there will naturally be a greater volume of sales transacted on social media. I read an analyst's article in the Financial Times some 18 months ago. I wish I could actually cite the analyst's name, and I can't remember, and I've tried for the life of me to find that article, but I can't. But nonetheless, that analyst referred to Facebook's halo effect, as in H-A-L-O. And that term, I think, has been coined in the industry thereafter as this effect where consumers trust Facebook implicitly. If it's on Facebook or if it's on the first page of Google, it must be trustworthy. And that's certainly the case with Google. Individuals who type in cheap X-brand dresses into Google and are presented with results will never look at the domain name or the URL of the website they're visiting. They'll click on the link and go straight to the website and trust it because it was in the first page of Google. So this halo effect is also contributing to why social media is becoming so trusted and therefore such a popular platform for e-commerce. And therefore it's very important you keep an eye on it, particularly for links to counterfeiters' websites. Another question, on Facebook, I'll read the question. So the question is, on Facebook, which tends to be more problematic, oh, sorry, I had to scroll up there, I just started reading halfway through. I'll read the question again, sorry. What would an external partner social media policy include? Okay, so what would an external or partner social media policy include? You should certainly provide a template for what a social media page for one of your partners should look like. And that template should be your own social media page. So you could say to a partner, here's our social media page, please mirror this as closely as you possibly can. You would want to ensure that the partner has the correct images, whether those are the most up-to-date images or whether indeed they are the images that you allow your partners to use, which may differ from those that you use yourself. The partner social media site should also have links to either their website or their website and your website, or indeed their website, your website, and any other official websites in that country. It should essentially be an extension of your own social media page and look as close to your own social media page so it has the uniformity in corporate branding. And I understand that many of my clients, as I've said before, are teams of one, maybe teams of two, and therefore don't have enormous resource. Perhaps you'd want to start with this program with your largest partners, the partners that get the most social media traffic, rather than take on an onerous task of ensuring all 300 of your partners globally have a compliant social media page. Maybe just focus on the top 5, those partners doing the most business for you. If your partners are actually affiliates like Selfridges and Liberty and so on, and Harrods, then perhaps start with Liberty, Selfridges, and Harrods. Yes, good question. Should we register proactively on new social media platforms which have now bandwidth to manage? I think what the lady's asking here is, should we register proactively on new social media platforms? Absolutely. You should have a presence on every social media platform, even those like Whisper that are still very small comparatively and may not have e-commerce engines. You should still register your own page, your own official presence. You don't want, in the example I gave earlier of the lady that told me an impersonator's Facebook page had more likes than their own brand's Facebook page, you never want to find yourself in that position. It gives their page credibility and removes credibility and provides incredulity to your page, and that's never the goal. Okay, another question. Where do review or opinion sites like TripAdvisor sit within social media enforcement? They unfortunately fit under the freedom of speech, which, though we don't have a written constitution like the United States does about freedom of speech, it's well recognized that if a comment is made that isn't in any way abusive or threatening or aggressive to an extent where it represents a threat, then that comment is covered under our understanding of freedom of speech and therefore cannot be removed. So unfortunately, review and opinion sites like TripAdvisor, for example, where somebody may leave a less than stellar review or even a downright negative review, unfortunately, there's no enforcement option available for those sites. Sorry, I'm just reading a question which not sure I understand the question. I'm just going to skip by that question and come back to it. Another is there a better IP right to rely on to get a positive response from the platforms? This is actually a two-part question, so let me answer that question first. Is there a better IP right to rely on to get a positive response from the platforms? It's always copyright image use. If the site is using your logos, which of course are images, or indeed any copyrighted images of your product, then that's always the best one. It's the same with marketplace enforcement. If you're ever attempting to do any of your own marketplace enforcement, let's say you find a listing on Alibaba and it uses your copyrighted images, always submit for copyright image first. It's just the most clear cut. You can show, should the social media site come back to you and say, well, can you prove this is your copyright? You can show proof of use by pointing them to your website or an affiliate's website or something similar. So that's the easiest IP right to rely upon in order to receive a positive response. The second part of this lady's question is, often an infringer uses your trademarks and copyright to impersonate your brand. Do you have to fill in 3 separate forms or just pick one? Unfortunately, and this is the unfortunate nature of you submitting these requests yourself to Facebook, you will need to send 3 separate forms. MarkMonitor do it in bulk, automated, mechanized, digital in instant fashion. Unfortunately, the social media pages, like the marketplaces, like the ISPs, don't make it easy for brands. The reality is that social media sites, just like marketplaces, want you to really work with a MarkMonitor type organization because they have one channel to deal with, MarkMonitor, as opposed to tens or hundreds of channels if every brand contacted them directly. Also, they know that it's gone through the necessary due diligence. When we submit something to a marketplace or a social media page, we're very confident indeed it's going to be removed. Social media sites recognize that brands will have more emotion tied to their enforcement requests and therefore may submit something that doesn't fall under the scope of the social media site's enforcement policy. And therefore, they don't make it particularly easy for you to submit multiple requests. Are the slides from this webinar available to view afterwards? Unfortunately, I can't send you my slides. I put a lot of time and effort into them, and they are proprietary to MarkMonitor. But we do have a recorded version of this presentation, which I believe will go up on our YouTube channel. And therefore, you can review this presentation at your leisure as many times as you wish in the future on our YouTube channel. I'll just wait a couple more minutes to see if any other questions have come through, or any other questions are coming through. Just give you a few more seconds to send any you may have. Do visit the MarkMonitor YouTube channel, because you'll also find other webinars from my learned colleagues at MarkMonitor that cover other subjects which may also be useful to you. And the wonderful thing about these recorded presentations is you can listen to them at your leisure. You can listen to just the bit that affects you or interests you or is relevant to you at that time. I'll leave it another minute or so to see if any other questions come through. Actually, a gentleman has asked a question, and a lady had asked a question earlier. They're the same question, so I'll address it now. A gentleman asks, Can you explain the Facebook ad system? We often report Facebook ads and Facebook states that they cannot locate them and have probably already been removed. Do users only pay to advertise for a specific period or for a specific number of clicks? Even though I read the question, I don't know the answer, but I will find out for you. I'll just use your first name, Sam. I'll find out for you, and I believe Melanie asked the same question. I'll find out for you, and I'll have your email addresses from when you registered for this webinar, and I'll send you both an email, or I'll have one of my colleagues who may be in a better position to answer the question send you an email. But either way, we'll get your question answered. I just don't know, and so I'd rather say I don't know than give you a guess. And then Melanie asks, in follow-up, the question, Melanie asks, are MarkMonitor clients having more problems on Facebook with the paid advertisements by fraudsters, or the fraudsters just using the free services? It's the fraudsters just using the free services. It's the second part of that. The vast majority of our clients are concerned with those with malintent, those who wish to monetize the brand, taking advantage of the free services of the brand, of the social media site. And when monitoring, you should be aware of that too. The advertising is something that really doesn't come up in my discussions with my clients. And as I said, if you think about who some of my clients are, I manage about 15 or so very well-known retail brands, mostly fashion, luxury brands, consumer goods. It very rarely comes up. It's mostly the fraudsters seeing it as a free channel to exhibit their wares. I think that might be it for questions. And so with that in mind, I would just like to thank you all very much indeed for your time and attention this morning, and this recorded version should be made available on the YouTube channel as soon as possible. So many thanks indeed, ladies and gentlemen, and do visit the channel so you can listen to other webinars from my learned colleagues. Thank you very much, and a good morning to you all.